Hi, everybody. I'm Zen Honeycutt of Moms Across America. And today we have a very special interview with Marise May of Chaz Organics. They are one of our newest 5-star Moms Across America gold standard products. They have a product which achieved that level. And we're going to talk about that today. And we're going to also talk a little bit about the food supply and some of the challenges and what some food manufacturers, which is no easy task in today's climate, what's going on right now, to be of the utmost quality, to have some of the highest standards. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today. And I think that this is an important time to discuss the food supply. And I'm very glad to have you on today. Marise is the co-founder of Chaz Organics. She owns a family-owned company with her husband, and they have some extraordinary food products. And we're going to talk mostly about one today, but also about how they choose to be food manufacturers in this climate. Welcome, Marise. Thank you so much for being on with us today.
Thank you, Zen, for having me. Very happy to have this chance to speak with you today.
Great, thank you. And you're coming to us from Canada, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. I'm in St. Lambert, just south of Montreal.
Great, and how long have you been a food manufacturer?
Well, actually, we've been in the food business for the past 13, nearly 14 years, but really 13 since we really got going.
Okay, and what got you started in that? What had you want to do this?
Actually, it's funny because I kind of come from a health food family. My parents actually met at Montreal's first health food co-op. So I really think it's in my blood or in my genes. And even beyond that, grandparents on both sides were in some way in the food, either in doing like seasonings, vinegars on my grandmother's side, or on my grandfather on the other side was actually in the flavor business. So I really think it kind of comes to me naturally. And Chan, my partner, his father also runs a fishery in Sri Lanka. So it's kind of in our genes. But actually, I set out to work more in the natural health sector. I studied nutritional science. I had an interest in naturopathy or some type of healing modality. But when I really got into the nutritional science program, I realized that there was so much to do just around nutrition and food at large that really caught my attention. So I actually didn't set out to be in the food business or even to run a business. But graduating from nutritional science, I just realized that there was an absolute disconnect between the science and what was known in academia and what was being practiced and sold to consumers on the level of food and food choices.
Wow, well, I love that. So you have a nutritional background. You're also a mother. So yes. You get how important it is, and that angle for, taking care of and protecting our families from yes. contaminants in the food supply. Yes, and absolutely. Yeah, and one thing I love about the process of the Moms Across America Gold Standard is that we get to know the applicants and their perspective on creating food, their connections that they have with their suppliers, and we get to know more about the actual food system and how it works. So we want to talk a little bit about that today, but first I want to ask, so why apply for the Moms Across America Gold Standard? What was it that appealed about it for you?
Well, Zen, I've been following your work for a while. I had seen you interviewed on a few podcasts that I enjoy, and what really caught my attention was just the way that you approach things, sort of that unstoppable attitude, and the way that you're approaching, health and our children's health and community and regulations and food from sort of an unconventional angle, where you're looking at where you want it to be and you're taking action. Just, instead of complaining about it and pointing fingers, it's like, what do we need to do to get there? And I think that's an approach that I also share, because coming out of university, I was looking at a broken food system and a lot of marketing dollars being spent by fast food companies, and sugary, chemical-laden cereals for kids and all that stuff. And I thought, okay, I could gripe about it and complain about this situation, or, I see an opportunity there to make things better. So if I become part of that system, maybe I can make a difference. And I think, that's a very proactive approach that I like. So when I saw the gold standard, I just thought, wow, that's us. We consider ourselves to be always 2 steps ahead of the competition. Like when we started out, there was no fair trade coconut milk. We were the first one, and then we innovated with BPA-free cans. And we've just always thought, how can our product be perfect? And if there's any obstacle, how do we overcome those obstacles to offer consumers something that we can be proud of? So I just felt that it really did apply to our vision of setting the bar and raising the standards in the food system. And so, yeah, and I like Moms Across America as an organization. So I was excited at the opportunity to partner.
That's so great. And that's one thing that I liked about you, learning about what you stand for and what you're doing. You shared with us that you learned as you were producing foods that you can actually put ingredients in, for instance, coconut milk that don't need to be labeled actually. And so there's like an easy way to do this. And then there's the way that you're doing it, which is definitely not as easy. There's much more integrity involved and care and attention and probably expense, I would guess I would go to say. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Not to badmouth other companies, but just to sort of enlighten us on what can happen in the food supply, how it works.
It's tough because it's not, I don't want to point fingers and I don't want to say, you know, blame the bad guy and all this. It's just that it's like with anything, people will cut corners. I'm a perfectionist. I don't enjoy cutting corners. That's just how I am. And, you know, if I do something, I always want to do it right. Even if it's just something for myself, you know, the way I might format one of my own Excel documents. I want it to be done right, you know? And some people aren't like that. They want to get to the finish line quickly. They want, you know, cut some corners and get a cheap product that they know will sell and make their margins. And so it's not to point fingers, but unfortunately, when it comes to food, that attitude results a lot of the time in food that's just not at the standard that I would like it to be, or that I think most families would like it to be. You know, and it's not, I know coconut milk and spices very well because we've been doing coconut milk and spices for years, but I assume that this is sort of common across the food industry. But I'll share what we've seen, especially with regards to coconut milk, is that while we work with small and medium scale growers in Sri Lanka and dedicated processors who are all, you know, certified to the highest degrees of food safety and quality and also treat their employees well. And so we only partner with who we consider to be the best. And this is in Sri Lanka. And Sri Lanka is a country where there is a whole range of quality. You know, you could get different levels of quality, and still Sri Lanka is a fairly good country to source food products from in terms of quality control. Most of the coconut milk comes from Thailand, where the cost is cheaper, but the quality standards are just not as high, even as Sri Lanka's baseline. So we know that some of these processors that supply most of the coconut milk, especially conventional, out of Thailand, are adding additives because they've had them tested in Sri Lanka. Our processors, I've heard this from different processors, not only one, have tested the Thai coconut milk and found other additives in it that aren't declared. They've found—
What kind of additives?
Well, the big one, you know, first of all, one is sulfites, because if you look at a conventional non-organic can of coconut milk, often that's listed as an ingredient, potassium metabisulfite, which is a bleaching agent. And why they use that is because they don't have to be as careful when they're shelling and peeling the coconuts, that they process them right away. So they can actually allow the coconuts to sit out all day. And I mean, my partner Cha has seen factories, you know, with his eyes, that where you see a whole factory full of coconut just sitting in these plastic bins and gathering, you know, flies. Doesn't matter, because once it's processed, the grayish color will be bleached out by the sulfites. So that's what that ingredient is for. It actually allows them to kind of be a little more, a little less careful about the timing of the processing. They don't need to just, you know, shell and peel and then directly, you know, blanch and process. They can actually let them sit out all day and then process the whole lot and bleach it. So that's what this.
And I would imagine that would affect the nutritional content as well. Things are always more nutrient dense when they're fresher.
Yeah, and also the oil will go rancid, you know, when you leave it out all day. The coconut oil, coconut's very fragile, so you really want to process it quickly. It's the same with coconut water. There's sulfites in a lot of coconut water, most coconut water. If it doesn't have sulfites, it'll have a yellowish color. But again, you know, it's such a fragile product, coconut, that you really want to process it quickly, and that takes time, it takes investment, and it takes, you know, setting up the production lines more carefully and cost. So sulfites are basically there to bleach the color to a whitish color instead of a grayish color. You know, often that is added to coconut milk. It's sort of standard in the industry. But in organic, of course, you don't want to have sulfites added. So the good processors will be more careful about how they're processing and not add the sulfites. Some processors who just want to slap on an organic certificate could potentially run the same process and just not indicate sulfates because they know that they can get away with it because no one's checking, no one's testing.
Okay, so it's the regulation that doesn't confirm this type of.
Yeah, exactly. And it could be at the country of origin or importer. In general, there's only so any inspectors to go around, and there's only so much money they want to spend on lab tests, and they'll periodically test certain things. Recently in Canada here, there was a big, they did a big kind of campaign around testing for certain allergens. Sometimes they'll do gluten. I, to this day, have not heard of sulfites getting tested in coconut milk. I've called CFIA and asked about this in the past, and they said, well, if you want to report on certain brands and, buy them and send them for testing and everything, let us know. But, I'm not in the business of being a regulator. So we do what we do and we know what we're doing. And I think the regulators, when they're alerted to this type of thing, should take action. Sadly, they don't. Sulfites isn't the only thing, though. I know I've heard from our manufacturers, they have tested for cornstarch. So that's a big one because obviously corn is an allergen and could be GMO. And it's used as a thickener along with cellulose, carboxymethyl cellulose, which often comes from wood pulp. So those are thickening agents. And what it allows some processors to do is to actually use less coconut, more water, and then add in some coconut oil to get the fat content and then add in a thickener. And that's a pretty common recipe for coconut milk. So normally what coconut milk is, like when we go to Sri Lanka, my mother-in-law, she'll grate a coconut. Some people don't know like how you make coconut milk, right? Because it's sort of confusing. There's the water inside and then there's the coconut milk. What coconut milk is, or should be, is you take the coconut, crack it open, you discard the water. That can be used for coconut water in some factories, or they just discard it. Then the white part inside is about that thick. There's like a white coconut flesh. That will be grated. It's the hand grater. They grate it by hand and then they put some water, press it. And so it's the pressed coconut flesh with added water that makes coconut milk. And that's it. There's 2 ingredients. So when you pick up a can of coconut milk and you see that there's, cellulose and cornstarch and sulfites and all these other things in there, they shouldn't be there. The reason they're there is to thicken the coconut milk. And often that means that, maybe the process wasn't as carefully done. So there's more risk of separation, or just the quality, the consistency isn't that good. So they want to thicken it. Or in many cases, they're actually just finding ways to thicken a product where it's more water, and they could have added the coconut oil back in from a cheaper source because it's on fat content that you purchase. So like there's we get a 9% fat, which is light. We get a 17% fat, which is the premium, and the cream is 22. And then our whipping cream is 24. So there's just, you purchase on fat content. Mm-hmm. If they can find ways to thicken it and add the fat back in, then, they win. Product costs less, they can sell it for a better price. So that's why those thickening agents could be in there, along with the sulfite to bleach it.
Well, I'm very concerned about the corn additive. That's shocking to me that can be added in. In some cases, you're thinking that some of these suppliers don't declare that on the label as well. Is that the case?
I only can go by what I've heard, but what I have heard is that I've heard from other manufacturers, because we know quite a few of them, that they've been approached from some of the major Thai brands and been asked to produce organic coconut milk, and the factory managers have said to us, sort of in conversation, I can't believe they're asking us to process this as organic, and none of that's going on the label. They're
trying to get away with taking the easy route and passing it off as organic. So that's why we created
a product where, the texture is agreeable to everyone. It's nice and smooth. It's just what you'd expect from a conventional product. And when you look at the label, it's just got, pure ingredients. But often they know that it's not pure, and they're doing this to just maybe appeal to a more mass audience who want that texture. Or sometimes it's the processor and the buyer doesn't even know. So it's not always the brand. It could be either or.
Right. Okay. Well, that's why we created the Moms Across America Gold Standard, because we are concerned as mothers about the level of contamination of things, even organic, unfortunately. and we would like extra testing, and you were willing to do that. And there is additional testing in the Moms Across America Gold Standard. You also tested for heavy metals and for glyphosate. And so tell us a little bit about, why do you think that that's important? Because some brands say, oh, it's just too expensive. Why do you think that's important?
Well, it is expensive. This year, our testing costs were, I think, 7 times more what they were the previous year, and that will only go up the more that we test. We're testing for allergens, we're testing for pesticides, we're also testing for food safety regularly because that's important. But it's part of the business, you know. I mean, we have profit margins, we sell our products, and that's the cost of doing business. It's just like we pay for our warehouse, or you know, we pay for our team to work, and we think that protecting the health of our consumers is important. So that's, you know, I don't think that it's optional. We did test more than we normally do for the gold standard because the criteria is very high. And eventually I would like to get all of our products, you know, to that level of testing. But what really pleased me with the process was that it showed that what we're doing to control the quality at the level of our very, very tight supplier relationships, and the transparency that we really uphold in our supply chain, is that we've achieved that gold standard. You know, we didn't know when we sent it for testing if every single, you know, 200 pesticides and glyphosate and all the heavy metals and everything would come back 100% clean. I had no guarantee, because contamination is a risk across the world. You know, I know they've tested trees in the boreal forest and found glyphosate in them. So it just really pleased me to go through the process and to know that all the steps that we've been taking are, you know, have a concrete result, which is that we can show our product is 100% clean and 100% pure and doesn't have a single trace of any of those pesticides or heavy metals. And it's wonderful. I was really happy to go through the process. So
that's a huge relief, and we want to make sure to show that product. So can you hold up that product? We'll also put in an image, but we ate all of ours. I had some. Okay, wait, so you'll have to say something so the camera goes to you.
All right, so this is the organic whipping cream. And what this is it's like a coconut milk, or a coconut cream rather, except that we've really taken steps to reduce the amount of water, and we've thickened it with tapioca starch. And why we chose tapioca starch is because it is a thickener that's grain-free, it's not very allergenic, it's very tolerated very well, tapioca, and no risk of GMO, you know, and it's just a really clean product. So all there is purified water. And by the way, the water filtration system where we process our coconut milk is incredible. It's huge, and it's well water and all, you know, very, very clean water that's all processed and purified coconut starch and coconut cream. And I'll just show you here what kind of texture you get. So I took some out of the can. When it comes out, it's very thick like this. And if you want to wait 1 minute, I can whip some up to show you.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So basically it comes out thick, but it's a whipping cream. It's not whipped. So you actually need to whip it.
Okay.
So
great. And while you're doing that, if you go ahead and do that, I'm going to say that I did get a sample and was able to whip it up. Yeah, go ahead. You can maybe mute yourself while you're, yeah. I got a sample and was able to whip it up, and my kids wanted me to add a little bit of maple syrup to make it a touch more sweet. And one time I added a little bit of cinnamon for our French toast or our waffles, whatever we were having that day. And they loved that. So you can add, your spices are wonderful, by the way. And also one time we whipped it up and used it for a cake frosting and also a cookie frosting. So for people who don't want to use straight sugar, you know, powdered sugar for cake frosting or cookie frosting, this is a fabulous alternative. And it's also great on top of your chai and latte, your turmeric lattes, yes, which is, I just had, it's all gone, but I just had some. So yeah, it's fabulous on top of that as well. It really makes it creamy and delicious, and I just love it. So let's see what you've whipped up here.
So this is the whipped cream. I literally just took a few seconds to whip that up, but you'll see it forms really nice. Actually, this has not been in the fridge. We just picked this up from the warehouse because we had also run out at home now that we're on lockdown.
So
Here.
hold it up, the spoon. Yeah.
So this can actually be chilled in the fridge. It'll get even stiffer. This is not chilled. You see it still makes a beautiful texture. And what I really love about it is it's absolutely melts in your mouth. The kids love the texture. Like you said, we use it for icings. You can use it on your waffles or pancakes. And sometimes we'll add a little bit of organic icing, sugar and vanilla just to make it sweet, or you could add stevia, but it's delicious just as it is. And I mean, we just love the product. Every time we've sampled it out at trade shows, we've just had such a fantastic response. I think it's not just the look, but it's the texture. It's so, it really melts in your mouth. It's really creamy.
Yes.
And I think that's what sets it apart from some of the other non-dairy whipped cream where they're using more just oils and, thickeners. So they just don't.
Yeah, well, what I don't like about the other non-dairy whipped creams is that they're mostly based out of soy and vegetable oils that I just don't believe. Yeah, I don't believe that they're healthy. And so I'm not interested in that. At somebody's house, if they have non-dairy, offerings and that's all that they have, I'll have it. But I don't enjoy it the way that I enjoy your product. So I'm really happy that you applied for it and we can get the word out about it. Now, can you share a little bit about the farm where you source these coconuts?
Yes.
We went through the process with you that they are actually regenerative. They use regenerative organic practices. Can you talk a little bit about those practices?
Yes. I mean, since day one, we've been working with small and medium scale producers for all of our products, so our spices, our coconut. Now we also have fruit like jackfruit. And what's always been really important to us is to be a fair trade company and to really respect the producers, the farmers, and the land that they're farming on. So they go hand in hand, The concept of regenerative agriculture is fairly new to many people, but we've had terms like, biodynamic. It's sort of what they call deep organic. So really what's at the roots of the organic movement is what's now being called regenerative in terms of, building soil health and making sure that you're always giving more back to the soil. So you're capturing carbon, but you're also strengthening the soil and adding more nutrients, which makes the plants healthier, which makes our air quality better, which reduces climate change. So regenerative agriculture really means that the farmers are using practices that regenerate the soil and therefore, our planet's health and the health of the food that's being grown. The farmers in Sri Lanka actually mostly practice agroforestry, which is nice because they don't really till forests like a coconut plantation. So we don't have the same issues around tillage that a lot of the grain farmers face here with trying to go regenerative. It's more in terms of just almost like a permaculture design. So they use traditional practices, agroforestry, sort of this permaculture method. And what you'll see when you visit the spice gardens or the coconut groves where we source our products is that everything's growing together. It's not like here in North America where you see like a field of canola, or like, in Canada, if you drive across Canada, it's just canola for days, or wheat fields. It's nothing like that. They call them farms, but they're gardens and they're beautiful. It's just like a little piece of heaven.
They're food forests, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly.
They grow mangoes together along with coconuts and bushes,
so
berries.
Sort of like an orchard where you'll have trees that produce different kinds of fruit, and even like nutmeg is a fruit, so there'll be a nutmeg tree and a coconut tree, and then there'll be pepper vines growing around the trees, and then on the ground you've got more of the cardamom shrubs and then the turmeric in the ground. There's different canopy levels, so and these are small and medium scale farmers, so each one might have 1 to 2 acres. The medium scale ones could have up to 10, or in the case of the coconut, because the demand for coconut is so high, we have some land that where we're with our partners converting what was sort of just plantations into agroforestry models. So we're actually regenerating those back into that forest model where it might have just been more of a monoculture. So it's really exciting because
I'm so glad you're doing that. You're regenerating the forest.
It's the whole range of the farmers who have been small scale farmers for generations, and their families have managed to keep those farms. That's a lot in the spice farms. And then with coconut, what's exciting is with the demand, we're actually able to convert some land back to organic, and then organic, deep organic, which is regenerative. So it's a process, and really it's it's a beautiful example of how living systems are adaptable, which is the whole, concept behind regeneration, that we, as part of a living system, we actually can have an impact on the environment. We are the people, we're the stewards of the earth. And if we decide to design our businesses that way, or our consumption patterns, or our growing methods, we can achieve incredible things in a short period of time. We can regenerate this planet into something beautiful. And just on that note, because I do love that idea, I've seen research out of the Rodale Institute that shows we would be able to capture all of our carbon emissions, global, net, if the whole world were to convert to regenerative organic farming. That's huge. That
Yes.
should be all over the news.
That should be all over the news. That is a solution. That is something that we can do right now. Our farmers can do right now, and they will benefit from it in such an incredible way. The farmers that I've talked to, and I'm sure that you've talked to,
They do.
The soil quality is improved, that
Yeah.
their nutrition density of the crops are improved, the output is improved.
Mm-hmm.
The soil absorbs more
Water
water.
holding capacity, everything gets better. The only thing that gets worse is, the chemical companies don't make as much. But I will say, and we are really interested in the new regenerative organic certification, which we intend to apply for. But I will say one thing that it troubles me, and it's one of the reasons why the regenerative organic certification was actually born, not because they wanted a new certification, but it's to prevent this sort of greenwashing, which we're at risk at right now as a movement, because many people are now looking at what they can kind of cherry pick from organic and then call it regenerative, but still apply things like glyphosate when they want to burn down the weeds, So there's regenerative wheat. Then there's a huge marketing campaign behind that. I'm not in the wheat business, so this is just because I'm in the industry, but it bothers me when I see it, because there's statements being made like, we'll stop desiccating our wheat with glyphosate, but they're not talking about how they're going to burn down their weeds to achieve zero till. There's so many issues. So if it's not organic, and the whole idea that you can be regenerative without being organic, I think is wrong. So for me, it's really organic first. Organic means you're not putting chemicals into your food, you're controlling the process. And then regenerative means there's an outcome. You can show that the soil is capturing more carbon, has better water holding capacity. And I think they have to go together. So I'm not a big fan of the regenerative movement, which doesn't look at inputs, which kind of turns a blind eye. Is there synthetic biology? Is there chemical inputs? We don't care. I don't really believe that that's regenerative, but I'm just warning people, you will see that term used, regenerative. And if it's not used along with organic, there could be synthetic biology, there could be glyphosate. So just
yes, absolutely. I completely agree with you. And I have had these conversations with people promoting regenerative that they don't want to use the word organic because they want to ease the farmers into the process. They want to say it's okay to still keep using chemicals for the first year or two, and eventually, what they're hoping, or what they intend, is that these farmers will see that if they do farm regeneratively, they won't need those chemicals. It'll be a process, and they will ease their way out of it. I like to be a little bit more upfront and be like, hey, here's the goal: zero chemical use. Let's get going. We can do this overnight, and we can. Right. We can. Sooner better than later, right? And let's get going with this. So I appreciate that you're pointing that out. There's just so many nuances to all of this, and it is important to really inspect what we're expecting from our food manufacturers and our suppliers and farmers, and say, hey, is this really what is happening? Is this, we expect it to be this way, but is this really what's happening? And I know that a lot of food manufacturers or producers balk from that. They don't want to be inspected, right? They don't want to inspect themselves. They don't want to find out. I mean, the reason why the Moms Across America Gold Standard started was partially because I was having a conversation with Dana Pearls from Friends of the Earth, and we were talking about the Natural Products Expo West, and she was commenting, that still so many food manufacturers don't even know that the vanilla that they're using, it's called vanillin, is actually synbio. It's GMO. Wow. And they have no idea that it is. They don't ask. They don't look to find out. So I thought, gee, we should let them know that we don't want that type of vanillin. We don't want GMO. We don't want synbio. Mm-hmm. But let's not do it in a protesty way. Let's do it in a way where we highlight the companies, right? We give them a list of like, hey, here's the Moms Across America, maybe gold standard. And that's how it was born. a list of what we want. And we want to celebrate and highlight the companies that are not only making food that's good for our families, but also good for the planet. And that's what you're doing. So I want to mention before we wrap this up is that the hold up the can again, the Chaz Organics coconut whipping cream.
Yeah, here it is, our whipping cream.
Okay, great. So that is a 5-star product. Now we have 3, 4, and 5 stars. And in the 3-star section, the product must be, sorry, my dog is making noise here, but the 3-star section, the product must have like no red food dyes and carrageenan and things like that, just some basics, no synthetic chemicals. Yeah. Also must be organic and must be glyphosate tested. We prefer glyphosate residue free that, from Detox Project, but if somebody's already testing from glyphosate, we'll accept those test results as long as they're from an accredited lab. And then in the 4-star section, that product must, if it could be GMO, right? If a GMO of that product exists on the market, then we require non-GMO project verified. But if it's not, clearly there's no GMO coconuts, that was not required for you. And also you sign an affidavit saying, of course, it's not GMO.
Yeah, and it's organic, so we can't use GMO.
And, yes, and it's organic, right? So, but that's like a next step, another level, yeah. And then in addition, pesticide and heavy metal testing, which you did and sailed through. And then if the product contains animal products, it needs to be humanely raised, but that did not apply. And then in the 5-star section or tier, they you signed an affidavit, your farmers, that they use fair trade and fair labor. Yep. And also that you have as eco-friendly packaging as possible. We love that your product does not come in a plastic tub. We just
I hate those, when you find out that earth friendly, whatever the brands are that say earth friendly, and then you look at the bottom of the plastic and it's not even recyclable.
Yeah, that just does not fly. For goodness sakes, we have enough plastic. So can you say a little bit about the steel can? Because you gave me the stats about recycling. That was really cool.
Yeah, so we actually use these cans, they're not that innovative. The cans have existed for a while, but they're not aluminum. Aluminum beverage cans are the ones that you would get pop, like soda, 7-Up, those type of things. So these are actually steel cans. And the nice thing about steel is that steel plate is just recycled over and over and over again. So these are actually one of the most highly recycled. Like the recycling rate on steel cans is very high. They're very easy to recycle. It's not like Tetra Pak where there's different layers to pull apart or different types of plastic. They're very recyclable, and the rate is very high, and they can just be recycled over and over again into cans. And also these are BPA free, and they don't have BPA derivatives either. Some companies will say BPA free, but they have like other bisphenols. So we were actually, the reason why Sri Lanka started importing actual real BPA free cans was because of us, because we really insisted, and we said, okay, it's not enough that it's BPA free if it has 5 other bisphenols in it, which used to be the BPA free that they were selling. So now we actually have BPA free, real BPA free.
That's fantastic. Thank you for being a leader in that movement to have BPA and derivatives of products.
I have my girls here that I have to credit because they're part of our company. We're a family business.
Hi girls. How beautiful. What are your names?
Leanne and Shanti.
Great. You know how lucky you are to have a mom that is so careful about the food they produce. She really makes a difference for other people.
I keep telling them that. No, I think they appreciate it.
Thank you for checking in with us.
Thank you.
Yeah. And okay. And then I want to make clear that the last step of the 5 stars, the last tier, is that they support regenerative, organic, or biodynamic farming. And clearly you do that. You've your producers have signed affidavits around all of that, and you go and inspect your farms. You go there, you know them, you meet with them in person. Sounds like paradise, I have to say, that whole food forest.
It is. I can't wait to go back.
Yeah, sounds like a great excuse to go to Sri Lanka. And by the way, Sri Lanka was, I believe, the first country to ban the use of glyphosate due to reasons.
I mean, the government in Sri Lanka, they're a very agrarian society, and they really do look out for the farmers. At least the current government right now, they're really still taking a lot of measures to put bans on toxic chemicals, to encourage the local organic food movement, which is great, and finding ways to even encourage farmers to convert away from chemicals. unfortunately, with the first ban on glyphosate, the lobbying groups were able to kind of overturn it. It's been back and forth, you know, often it comes from the industry that it's the government tries to put bans, and then the lobbying in the industry, especially for tea and some rice, you know, they really insist that they need it. So it kind of goes back and forth. But right now, the restriction, I believe, is such that certain growers can probably use it, but it's not as widely available as it was.
Yeah, that was my understanding too when talking to some other growers in that area.
And sadly, though, why that happened was because of the kidney disease epidemic that forced the government and forced people to realize that this was poisoning people.
Yeah, it was tens of thousands of farm workers that used glyphosate came down with kidney and liver disease and died. And so they eventually, they did ban it. It was overturned in some ways, but it just in case you didn't catch that, I want to clarify for people that your tea and your rice really do need to be organic, because they can spray glyphosate as a drying agent on these products, and it's very concerning. And so even wheat as well, and the whole grains will have like a brown rice or a whole grain wheat, if they're sprayed with glyphosate as a drying agent. If they're non-organic, that's a very high possibility that that's what's happening. The whole grain will have more glyphosate on it. So you think it's healthier, right? The brown rice and the whole grain, but it's actually going to contain more glyphosate.
Exactly.
So very concerning issues about the food supply. I'm glad to touch on some of them. We're going to wrap up now, but I just want to close out with saying, are you doing okay with this whole COVID shutdown thing? Are your suppliers still able to get your supplies to you?
Yeah, thank you for asking. First, I want to say that I really can't complain, and my heart goes out to people who are really struggling through this, because I know a lot of people are, and I'm pretty vocal about that, you know, the fact that, hey, we got to look out for everyone here. It's not okay to just, shut people out of the workforce or the economy and then not make sure they're okay. But one thing I have to be very grateful for is that I am in the food business. So our business is deemed essential, and we've been able to operate without interruption. That said, we are operating from home, just to, limit our going out too much, but also because we have our children home with us. So it's a bit of a challenge, but I think we're really rising to the challenge. And for our processing partners, I would say it's been more of a challenge because they've had a real lockdown in Sri Lanka. They've been facing curfews. So, they've had to actually figure out how to operate their factory with higher demand, with reduced staff, but they're pulling through. And, that's one of the things that I've been saying for years when I speak to people about fair trade and about the importance of having these solid supply chains where you really can depend on all the partners across the board, is that what we're seeing is, even in times where it's a little more difficult, we have those strong relationships that we can leverage. So we're still getting products, and we're supporting them, they're supporting us. So it's really in tough times that you see the strength of your supply chain and your relationships. So far, we're doing well, and we're able to supply the demand. And we're hoping that, everyone pulls out of this stronger. I think one thing that we have to remember is that, and it is in the concept of regeneration, is that, disruption can be an opportunity to regenerate, to do things better. And so it's the vision that I like to hold. And I know, Zen, you've spoken about this too. It can be scary, but let's try to imagine a world that we want and build it. Everyone just think about that. What can we all do to get there together?
Absolutely. Just like a forest that's burned down, new growth can spring up, and it can
Exactly.
the ashes can regenerate the soil. We can do something new. We can have new local food systems that work. We can supply, have new suppliers that are more fitting to the type of products that we want to create. And we appreciate so much that you and your husband and your family and your team are putting the time and attention into what type of product that you want to create with such integrity, with such a level of scrutiny and care. And so we want to thank you for your time and attention that you put into that. I can't tell you how many allergy scares I have had with my kids, even neighbors giving my child a food that they thought was organic or, at least very natural. And my kids break out in a full body rash. It's very scary. And so we need people like you to put the time and attention into the integrity of your products. And we cannot thank you enough. Like, really, it is a life or death situation with some people. And so we so appreciate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zen. Thank you for recognizing that. It's not everyone who recognizes the importance. And unfortunately, sometimes maybe it does take those those situations that really challenge us to make us realize how important our food safety is. And I'm, really my heart goes out to you with the level of concern that you need to show, because my children also do have intolerances, but they're not life-threatening. So I can relate, I can understand, but it's just, I try to empathize as much as I can, and I try to make sure that what we're offering, I can't control what other people do, but at least what we're offering is safe for everyone. That's really our goal.
Yay, awesome. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Thank you for taking this time to be with us.
Thank you, Zen. Thank you.
And thank you for making a Moms Across America Gold Standard 5-star product, which is the Chaz Organics Coconut Whipping Cream, which can also be used for frosting and icing and a whole in desserts and treats and all kinds of things like that. It's just a delicious product. We absolutely love it. We hope to see it everywhere across America. And it's also a great alternative for people who are vegan that want something that is a whole food and not oil-based. It's a whole food product. So we appreciate your time and energy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We look forward to
And
talking
be
to you
well.
Food Supply. Okay.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.